The war had no beginning. At least, no one alive remembered it. For centuries, the Xelari Empire and the Drogan Dominion had fought across the stars, turning entire planets into lifeless wastelands. No one asked why anymore. No one cared. Victory was the only thing that mattered. Today was no different. Above the planet Velker 7, thousands of warships clashed in the void. Energy cannons lit up the darkness. Missiles screamed through space. The battle was brutal, merciless, endless. The Xelari fleet, led by Supreme Admiral Calvor, was pushing forward. His serpent-like species had ruled for generations, and he was determined to crush the Drogan once and for all. Across from him, Warlord Gorvak of the Drogan, a massive, armored brute, commanded his forces with ruthless efficiency. His kind lived for battle, and he would rather die than surrender. The two fleets collided like thunder. Battleships exploded. Fighters weaved through enemy lines. Neither side gave an inch. On the surface of Velker 7, civilians hid in underground bunkers. They had no allegiance, only fear. They had seen this battle before. Different year, different name, same destruction. And they knew no one would come to save them. Then, something changed. It started with a whisper in the fleet's communication lines, a strange static that no one could explain. Then the ships stopped responding. Admiral Calvor slammed his claws on the control panel. "Report. What's happening?" His officers frantically checked the systems. The fleet was shutting down. Weapons offline. Engines unresponsive. Shields failing. On the Drogan side, Warlord Gorvak had the same problem. His fleet was dead in space. Panic spread. This wasn't an attack. This was something else. Something worse. Then they saw them. A new fleet appeared out of nowhere, emerging from the darkness like ghosts. Silent. Black. Deadly. No markings. No transmissions. No known origin. The war fleets had fought countless enemies before, but this was different. Because these ships were not part of the war. And that made them far more terrifying. The first message came through. A cold, mechanical voice echoed across every ship, every bunker, every world that was watching. "The war is over." Admiral Calvor's blood ran cold. Who were they? His officers tried to trace the signal. They failed. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Then a second message followed. "You have forgotten us, but we remember you." Calvor and Gorvak exchanged glances across the battlefield. Forgotten who? Then the realization hit them. Humanity. But that was impossible. Humanity was dead. Destroyed centuries ago. Erased from history. A minor species that had been crushed beneath the power of the great empires. And yet, they had returned. And now, the Xelari and Drogan finally understood true fear. "You said." The battlefield was silent. Admiral Calvor's claws dug into the metal armrest of his command chair. He could hear his officers breathing heavily, their scales twitching with unease. The Drogan warships floated lifeless in space, just like his own fleet. There was no battle anymore, only stillness. In the distance, the unknown fleet remained motionless. Dozens of massive, dark ships, their surfaces smooth and unmarked, giving away no sign of allegiance. They did not broadcast threats. They did not demand surrender. They simply existed. Calvor turned to his communications officer. "Send a message. Identify them." The officer's fingers moved rapidly over the controls. "Admiral, our signals are not going through. They are being blocked." The same problem was happening aboard the Drogan command ship. Warlord Gorvak slammed his massive fist into the side of his chair, leaving a dent. His tusks flared in frustration. "Someone tell me what is happening. Are they attacking?" His officers were pale. "No, Warlord. They are just there." Gorvak narrowed his eyes at the screens. His people had spent their entire existence in war. They knew battle. They knew chaos. But this silence, This unnatural stillness, it was worse than any weapon. Then, without warning, the unknown fleet moved. Not slowly, not cautiously. 1 second, they were there. The next, they were everywhere. In perfect synchronization, the dark ships surrounded the Xelari and Drogan fleets, their formation flawless, their movements impossible to predict. No acceleration burns, no energy trails. It was as if they simply teleported. Kelvor felt something he had not felt in a long time. Fear. The voice returned. It was the same mechanical tone as before, emotionless, empty. You have forgotten us, but we remember you. Kelvor's heart pounded in his chest. His mind raced through the possibilities. Who were they? No known empire possessed this kind of technology. No civilization could shut down entire fleets so effortlessly. Gorvak bared his teeth. What do you mean, forgotten? Identify yourselves. For a long moment, there was no answer. Then a single word appeared on every screen, in every language used by the galactic empires. Humanity. Silence fell once more. Kelvor's breath caught in his throat. It couldn't be. Humanity was gone. The records were clear. The Xelari and Drogan had both taken part in the war that wiped them out. Humanity had been a minor species, insignificant in the grand scale of the galaxy. Their worlds had burned. Their fleets had been shattered. They had been erased. Yet here they were. Gorvak let out a low growl, his voice filled with disbelief. No, this is a trick. Humanity is extinct. The voice responded immediately. Incorrect. A sudden shift rippled through the battlefield. Every disabled warship powered back on, but something was wrong. The controls were not responding. The systems were locked out. Then, in a horrifying display of power, the Drogan battleships turned their weapons on each other. One ship fired. Another exploded. Panic erupted across the Drogan fleet as their own vessels betrayed them, cutting down their allies. Kelvor watched in horror as the same thing happened to his own ships. Cruisers turned against their carriers. Fighters launched but were immediately destroyed by automated defenses. Gorvak roared in frustration. They are controlling our ships. Impossible, Kelvor whispered. No one has this level of technology. But humanity did, and they were making a statement. The war was no longer in the hands of the Xelari or the Drogan. It was in the hands of the ghosts of their past. Panic spread through both fleets as warships turned against their own kind. Drogan battleships unleashed barrages of plasma fire at their allies, while Xelari cruisers fired missiles into their own formations. It was chaos, but not random. The humans controlled it all. Admiral Kelvor struggled against the command console, trying to override his ship's systems. Nothing responded. His officers frantically pressed buttons, attempting manual control, but every system was locked. Across the battlefield, Warlord Gorvak's fury was visible. His heavy fists slammed into his chair. I will not die like this, he growled. Find a way to break their control. His engineers worked desperately, but their screens only showed a single message repeating over and over. The war is over. Kelvor bared his fangs, his mind racing. How? How was this happening? Humanity had been a weak species. Their technology had been average at best. Their worlds had fallen easily. And yet, here they were, turning the two greatest empires in the galaxy into puppets. Then, the human fleet moved again. Dozens of black, featureless warships advanced, their movements eerily perfect, as if controlled by a single mind. They did not fire a single shot. They didn't need to. The Xelari and Drogan were already destroying themselves. A cold realization crept into Kelvor's mind. This wasn't revenge. This was punishment. The voice returned. You thought us weak. You thought us extinct. You were mistaken. For the first time in his life, Kelvor felt truly helpless. Human fleet, he spoke, forcing his voice to remain steady. What is it that you want? Silence. Then, a new message appeared on every screen. Judgment. Suddenly, the controlled warships stopped firing. The Xilari and Drogan fleets, now severely damaged, drifted in the void. Thousands of wrecked ships burned in the darkness. The lucky survivors barely had functional vessels. But it was not over. The human fleet positioned itself in a precise formation, their weapons now powering up for the first time. And this time, they were aiming at the enemy homeworlds. Calvor's eyes widened. They weren't just ending the war. They were about to erase the empires themselves. Calvor felt his blood turn to ice. The human fleet had not fired a single shot in this battle. They had simply taken control and let the Xilari and Drogan destroy themselves. Now they had finally revealed their true target. Not the fleets, the homeworlds. Massive black warships shifted position with terrifying precision, aligning their weapons toward the Xilari capital world, Xilor Prime, and the Drogan homeworld, Drogathar. These were not ordinary warships. Their sheer size dwarfed anything Calvor had ever seen. Their technology was beyond comprehension. The message flashed again on every screen. Judgment begins. Warlord Gorvak's fury turned to desperation. No, you don't understand. If you fire, trillions will die. The voice responded, cold and final. Just as humanity died. Calvor clenched his claws. We never saw humanity as a threat. We only acted because the Drogan started the war against you. Gorvak turned sharply, his eyes burning with rage. Lies. It was the Xilari who betrayed them first. Enough, the voice interrupted. A bright glow formed at the front of the human warships. The energy signatures were off the scale. The power they were generating was unlike any known weapon in the galaxy. It could wipe out an entire world in an instant. Calvor's mind raced. There had to be a way out. You claim we forgot you, he said quickly, his voice steady but urgent. Tell me, how did you survive? Silence. Then, for the first time, the voice changed. It was no longer purely mechanical. There was something else beneath it. Something human. You thought we were gone, but we never left. The screens flickered. Images appeared. The Xilari and Drogan leaders watched in horror as recordings played. Hidden footage of humanity's last days. Cities burned. Refugees fled into the void, chased by merciless warships. Children cried as the skies were torn apart. And then the final image. A single colossal ship, damaged, barely functional, disappearing into deep space, vanishing into the unknown. You hunted us, the voice continued. You erased us from history. But in the darkness, we rebuilt. We waited. Calvor's heart pounded. Humanity had not been destroyed. They had hidden. They had prepared. And now, they had returned, stronger than ever. Please, Calvor said, swallowing his pride. If you do this, you will become the same as us. You will become the monsters we once were. Gorvak's voice was low, filled with something he had never felt before. Not rage, not defiance, but acceptance. They already have. The energy buildup reached critical levels. The human fleet was ready to fire. Calvor closed his eyes. This was the end. The moment stretched endlessly. Admiral Calvor's claws gripped his chair, his mind racing. The human fleet's weapons were charged, one shot, and his entire species would be erased. Warlord Gorvak sat motionless, watching the screens in silence. The great Drogan warlord, a warrior who had never known fear, was now staring into the abyss. Then, something unexpected happened. The energy buildup stopped. The human ships remained locked onto Xilor Prime and Drogathar. But their weapons did not fire. The tension in the air was unbearable. Why were they waiting? A new message appeared. You do not deserve mercy, but you will receive it. Calvor's breath caught. Mercy. After everything. The mechanical voice returned, softer this time. We were never like you. We never wanted war. We only wanted to exist. The images on the screens changed. This time, they did not show destruction. They showed what humanity had become. Massive hidden colonies in the depths of space. Planets covered in new cities, untouched by the war. Fleets being built in secret, growing in strength for centuries. They had never been extinct. They had simply been waiting. You burned our worlds, the voice continued, but we built new ones. You slaughtered our people, but we endured. You tried to erase us. The voice paused. And yet here we are. Calvor could barely process it. Humanity had not returned to destroy. They had returned to show that they had won. We control your fleets, the voice said. We could erase your people. But that would make us like you. Gorvak exhaled sharply. Then what will you do? The human fleet finally moved. Their weapons powered down. The ships pulled away from their positions over the homeworlds, drifting back into the darkness. You will remember this day, the voice said, because from now on, we will be watching. The screens flickered one last time. The war is over. Then, silence. The human fleet vanished into deep space, leaving behind nothing but the wreckage of the battle. The Xelari and Drogan warships, now free from control, powered back up. But there was no celebration, no victory, only the realization that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had returned, and now they ruled the shadows. For the first time in centuries, there was no war. The Xelari and Drogan fleets drifted in stunned silence. Their weapons were back online, their ships once again under their control, but no one dared to fire. Because the truth was clear. They had lost. Not through destruction, not through conquest, but through absolute domination. Humanity had returned, not as a struggling species, but as gods of war, untouchable, unstoppable, and unseen. Admiral Calvor's hands trembled as he watched his screen. Every trace of the human fleet was gone, as if they had never existed. Yet the damage they had done, both physically and psychologically, was irreversible. Warlord Gorvak let out a long, slow breath. His massive form slumped in his chair. The great Drogan war machine, the unstoppable force of destruction that had conquered countless worlds, had been humiliated without a single human casualty. He growled, "We cannot allow this to stand. We must." Calvor cut him off. "We will do nothing." Gorvak turned sharply, his tusks flaring. "You would just let them walk away after this." The Xelari Admiral's eyes darkened. "Did you not see? They were toying with us. If they wanted us dead, we would be dead. If they wanted our empires erased, they would have done it without effort." Gorvak's fists tightened, but deep inside, he knew Calvor was right. They had been at humanity's mercy. The Drogan leader exhaled sharply. "Then what do we do?" Calvor stared at the emptiness of space where the human fleet had vanished, watching, waiting, controlling the battlefield without being seen. "We prepare," he said, "because if they return as enemies, there will be no mercy next time." Gorvak remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. The Galactic War had ended. But a new kind of war had begun. A war of shadows, a war of fear. Because now, every species in the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was still out there, and they would never be forgotten again. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The Xelari and Drogan no longer waged war. The once mighty empires that had ruled through blood and conquest now ruled through fear, not fear of each other, but fear of the unseen force that had humbled them. Humanity. They had vanished as quickly as they had arrived. No homeworld, no empire, no territory. Ghosts in the void. Yet their presence was felt everywhere. Every empire now watched the darkness. Every military fleet kept their sensors scanning the emptiness of space, terrified that at any moment, the silent black warships would return. But they never did. Not openly. Strange events began to happen. Drogan warlords who spoke of rebuilding the war machine disappeared without a trace. HFY scientists who attempted to study AI warfare found their research deleted overnight. Entire fleets mobilized for expansion were disabled before they could leave orbit, their systems overridden by an unknown force. The message was clear: the war was over, and it would never return. Calvor, now supreme strategist of the HFY Empire, stared at the reports. Humanity had not just survived. They had become something else, something unstoppable. Warlord Gorvak had changed as well. He no longer sought battle. He no longer roared for conquest. He feared what lurked in the dark. And then, one day, a final message appeared on every galactic network. No ships, no voice, just simple words. We do not rule. We do not conquer. We do not ask for surrender. A pause. But we are watching. Then, silence. No one ever saw a human warship again, but no one dared to forget them. Because now, humanity was not a species. They were a legend, a warning, and a shadow that would haunt the galaxy forever.